So what's the microchip do to the people that purchase them? Like, how do they work for the average day person?
Well, we'll release the nanobots to take over the neural cortex, and then I run them from my PlayStation. I guess just create a seamless and friction-free everyday lifestyle. I mean, I have to look for my keys, my wallet, my this, that. If I get my gym card in my bag, when I change bags, you know, I get to pay a fine, a €2 fine if I don't have my card. So now I'll get it in my chip implant instead. Entrance to the office, I get an entrance to the gym. I deactivate and activate the alarm. I do the shopping for a drink with the microchip. That little sequence alone has saved me maybe a minute. And when you think of it, I mean, I forget all my stuff because I'm fairly limited. Because I'm a human being. Of course, there's ways to train your memory and jog your memory. I can write Post-its and put all my stuff in the same place all the time, but I forget to do that as well. So having everything stuck in my hand at all times makes my life very simple.
Trending today at 6:23, a British company has an idea that would let you ditch your wallet or purse and still be able to pay for things. But as you can imagine, not everyone's on board with this one.
And here's why. They're selling microchips to implant under your skin. The company Walletmore says the $300 chip is the size of a grain of rice. You'd most likely have it implanted in your hand. And once it's activated, you can use it at a checkout by just swiping your hand over the card reader.
I would love this because I never know where my debit card is. It's usually in one of their wallets. So if I could put it right in my hand, I'd be happy about it.
Oh, man, I'm surprised with that. But hey, more Sunrise ahead at 6:30.
Thousands already have microchip implants that they use in their daily lives, waving their hand to gain entrance to the gym, confirm their ID or make payments. This event is an implant party, simply where ordinary people can show up and get a microchip embedded under their skin.
I think it's really cool. You don't have to carry any keys or anything.
We have created a new implant, which is not a chip, it's a full device where you can add different lights, different vibration, different functions. Sweden is a very tech-literate society. And I think this is the main explanation, really, why a lot of Swedes are adopting chip implants.
With all the current issues on our agenda, we tend to forget that we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, which accelerates global change in much more comprehensive and faster ways than the previous three revolutions.
And you see, the difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, just as an example, it's you who are changed. And of course, this has a big impact on your identity.
We need to realize that humans are now hackable animals. You can hack them. A good two-way communication system, direct communication system between brains and computers, this is kind of the watershed moment. I mean, once you have a good two-way, nobody has any idea what happens after that. No, I think maybe in a couple of decades when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin. I think that the big process that's happening right now in the world is hacking human beings, the ability to hack humans, to understand deeply what's happening within you, what makes you go. And for that, the most important data is not what you read and who you meet and what you buy, it's what's happening inside your body. So we had these two big revolutions, the computer science revolution or the infotech revolution and the revolution in the biological sciences. And they are still separate, but they are about to merge.
History is truly at a turning point. We do not yet know the full extent and the systemic and structural changes which will happen. However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems and supply chains will be deeply affected.
But the fourth industrial revolution is actually changing ourselves. It's changing not only what we are doing, it's changing who we are. What the fourth industrial revolution will lead to is a fusion of our physical, our digital, and our biological identities.
Smartphones and governments using that technology and a greater threat of surveillance. Can you talk to me about this, and do you think ultimately this is a good or a bad thing for civilization?
It could be good, but we need to be very careful about it. What's happening now, it's really a watershed in the history of surveillance. First of all, we see mass surveillance systems entering and being adopted in democratic countries which previously resisted them. Secondly, we see the nature of surveillance changing from over-the-skin surveillance to under-the-skin surveillance.
Extremely tough, Brianna. We are seeing record rental prices across the United States, no more so than here in the state of Florida. Miami seeing a 58% increase on rent on average in just the last 2 years. That is pricing Floridians out of their homes and into this extremely competitive rental market.
Lists and lists and lists.
Laura Gilmain and her daughter Carson have 30 days to find a new home.
How many properties do you think you've explored?
Thousands.
For 3 years, Gilmain has been paying $2,100 a month for this 3-bedroom in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. But last month, she got a letter from her landlord.
Due to unforeseen circumstances.
Her new rent, $3,200 a month.
Thank you. Well, sky-high food prices and people in the farming and ranching industry say it's only going to get worse.
9 on your side's Brian Brennan has more on ranching costs continuing to rise across the country and in southern Arizona.
Everyone is feeling the pain from the price of gasoline, but it's diesel that could end up costing you more at the grocery store. The cost of everything is going up, and that includes what ranchers need to pay for.
The hay prices have gone up, double the hay prices, and it looks like it's going to continue to go up even more.
But we do begin with New York City declaring a state of emergency over the nationwide baby formula shortage. The order empowers the city to prevent price gouging as inventory declines.
The nature of money is going to change quite dramatically. The old systems of trust and of ownership will have to adapt radically. Maybe the financial system will become so complicated as AI takes over more and more of the action that it will be just too complicated for the human mind. So how does a system function when no human really understands it? Maybe the ultimate destiny of Homo sapiens is just be consumers. You don't need humans for anything except as consumers. There are many occasions in history when people didn't value very much other people as consumers. If you think about slave economies, so you didn't think, oh, we should liberate all the slaves and improve their conditions so that they will buy our products. And in the future, slavery is unlikely to return. If you need less humans, you definitely don't need slaves. But you could, for example, encounter a situation in which machines are also the consumers. You need consumers, but even in consumption, somebody is doing a better job than humans. You could have an entire economy flourishing without humans in the loop. You can have one corporation that mines ore and produces steel and sells it to a second corporation that produces robots. And they are sold back to the mining corporation that mines more steel, more iron, produces steel, sell it to the robotics corporation. And these two corporations can form an entire economic ecosystem, which can spread from planet Earth to other planets and throughout the galaxy, just colonizing new planets and asteroids to mine things, and you just don't need humans in the loop. It's not a law of nature that you always need humans, even as consumers, or all the humans as consumers. There could be potentially other consumers out there. Now the question arises, but what's the point? What's the point of having this closed circle economy that benefits nobody outside? But you can ask the same thing about the human economy. You could have sophisticated economies in the future in which humans, or at least many humans, are not needed even as consumers. Now, I'm speaking specifically about Europe, is how few people are willing to kill or be killed for nationalism, which is a wonderful development, don't get me wrong. A century or two ago, to decide a question like whether Britain should be part of a European Union or an allegedly independent country, you would need a big war with millions of people being killed and injured and so forth. As far as I know, in Brexit, only one person lost her life, a British MP who was murdered by some fanatic. And the rest of the people just followed whatever the referendum said. And it's the same with the Scottish referendum. In past century, if Scotland wanted to be independent of London, and they wanted to be independent a couple of times, they needed to raise an army and to confront the armies that London would send from the south to burn Edinburgh down. Now they just go to a referendum, and almost everybody just accept the results. Very few people are willing to actually be killed or to kill. The three biggest problems we face are nuclear war, climate change, and technological disruption. And none of these problems can be solved on the level of a single nation. You just can't solve climate change or regulate AI on the level of a single nation. So the only solution to these global problems is greater global cooperation. Whether we'll actually see greater global cooperation, I don't know. It's the wise thing to do, but we should never underestimate human stupidity. The most important fact about living in the 21st century is that we are becoming hackable animals. And you have these two components. The animals come from biology and from biotech, and the hacking comes from infotech and from computers. But for almost any change that people talk about today, you need to take biology into account. Even something like a self-driving car. For a self-driving car, on the road, it's important to first be able to tell the difference between a child and an adult, to gauge the age of that human being, and to know something about what's the difference in behavior between an 8-year-old, an 18-year-old, and an 80-year-old person. And that's critical, even for something like self-driving car. When you reach the point when you say, okay, I want an AI doctor, I want an AI teacher, to replace or augment human doctors and human teachers, there it's obvious that without biotech, you are not going to get very far.
Now for an update on monkeypox. More than 550 confirmed cases have now been reported to WHO from 30 countries that are not endemic for monkeypox virus. Investigations are ongoing, but the sudden appearance of monkeypox in many countries at the same time suggests there may have been undetected transmission for some time.
This is an outbreak. We have 500 cases so far, more than 500 cases. We do expect to see more because people who have been infected in the last few weeks may have continued to transmit during a period of time when they didn't know what they had, when they had not had an opportunity to have a diagnosis, when this spread had not been detected yet.
Anyone can be infected with monkeypox if they have close physical contact with someone else who is infected. The situation is evolving, and we expect that more cases will continue to be found.
So we don't really know whether it's too late to contain. What WHO and all member states are certainly trying to do is to prevent onward spread. So it's really important that we collectively all work together to prevent onward spread through contact tracing, outbreak investigation, isolation for people who have a diagnosis of monkeypox and symptoms.
This is not about stealing sovereignty from countries. This is about countries coming together to solve problems together. We've seen the climate change, we see with pandemics. There is no national solution to these. We need strong national systems and we need strong national commitments on climate change. We need strong national commitments on preparedness, but that's not enough. We need to be able to come together at a global level and make the necessary commitments to do the preparedness, to do the prevention, to get ourselves ready and to respond effectively in the next pandemic. That requires a degree of international agreement on how we will behave before and during the next pandemic.
Ideally, the response to COVID should be the establishment of a global healthcare system, a basic healthcare system for the entire human race. You know, lots of people, you mentioned populist leaders, they are very much in favor now of building walls and building fences on the borders. We need a wall on the border, but not between countries. We need a wall on the border between humanity and the viruses. If a virus anywhere in the world breaches this border and infects a person in South Africa or in Indonesia or in Brazil, anywhere, this places everybody in danger.
WHO is committed to stronger governance, accountability, and efficiency. The Assembly is also made important decisions on strengthening WHO's preparedness for and response to health emergencies, including making targeted amendments to the international health regulations. Alongside a new international accord on pandemic preparedness, a sharpened IHR will be a critical piece of a stronger global architecture for health emergency preparedness.
Now, we did have countries that did a good job. Australia is an example. So we have to create a new team. I believe we should create what I call the GERM team. GERM stands for Global Epidemic Response and Mobilization. This group is full-time. Their only priority is pandemic prevention.
And there is no question of any loss of sovereignty or any play by global powers to take over the world. This is not what this is about. This is about finding the necessary level of agreement to protect all of our communities in the future.
We need some kind of global loyalty and global identity.
While we have not seen deaths reported yet, we have not also seen monkeypox circulate in vulnerable populations in the non-endemic countries, so pregnant women, for example, or children. And so what we want to ensure is that we take steps to prevent onward transmission so that we don't see this virus entrenched in communities across Europe, across the Americas, across the Western Pacific, across the Eastern Mediterranean region.
There is going to be a research and development blueprint meeting. I think, is it this week or next, Rosamund? This week, which will bring together researchers, not just around the issue of vaccines or the issue of the outbreak as we see it now in Europe, but specifically also around the upstream parts of this and the origins.
Misinformation kills. Just as these viruses kill, misinformation kills as well. So as Gabby explained, and as we've been explaining throughout this whole pandemic, we target this on multiple different levels, whether it's through social media, whether it's through the different companies, whether it's through our EpiWin platform, whether it's through religious leaders or religious communities, youth leaders, through our risk communication materials, through our myth-busting materials. This is a constant challenge for us, and it remains a constant challenge, not only for COVID-19, across the entire spectrum of the interventions and the response that we have. It's not only misinformation about vaccines, it's misinformation, it's the attacks on science that undermines the effectiveness of our countermeasures. It undermines the response. We see this happening with monkeypox. We will see this happening with the next one.
After thousands of years during which humans were the rulers of the world, authority and power will shift away from humans to computers, and most humans will become economically useless and politically powerless. Already today, we are beginning to see the creation of a new class of humans, the useless class.
Let's talk a little bit about the vaccine reserves that WHO has and that some countries do also have. So this vaccine reserve was established in 1980 at the time of the eradication of smallpox. It was done at the request of the World Health Assembly. The reserves consist of vaccine that was used at that time. This is a vaccine that remains extremely stable under cold conditions, under frozen conditions. And so a number of countries have maintained their reserves because the world has deemed it desirable to maintain a certain level of preparedness in the event of reemergence of smallpox, which could be through a natural occurrence, through an accident, or through a deliberate event.
We have to believe that it's possible to stop a localized outbreak becoming a raging global pandemic. And that means better surveillance, more transparency, frankly, by all member states. If they think something's happened, it's got to be reported. And the WHO needs the power to be on the site with whatever teams need to be deployed. It needs to be able to publish the information it has rather than beg countries for permission to do it. It's got to be able to take a precautionary approach in running up a flag. And it's got to be able to declare an emergency without being kneecapped by an emergency committee. These are basic things that need to be dealt with in a review of the international health regulations. Otherwise, we will lose weeks again next time something happens.
With all the current issues on our agenda, we tend to forget that we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution, which accelerates global change in much more comprehensive and faster ways than the previous three revolutions.
And you see, the difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, just as an example, it's you who are changed. And of course, this has a big impact on your identity.
We need to realize that humans are now hackable animals. You can hack them. A good two-way communication system, direct communication system between brains and computers, this is kind of the watershed moment. I mean, once you have a good two-way, nobody has any idea what happens after that. No, I think maybe in a couple of decades when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin. I think that the big process that's happening right now in the world is hacking human beings, the ability to hack humans, to understand deeply what's happening within you, what makes you go. And for that, the most important data is not what you read and who you meet and what you buy, it's what's happening inside your body. So we had these two big revolutions, the computer science revolution, or the infotech revolution, and the revolution in the biological sciences. And they are still separate, but they are about to merge.
History is truly at a turning point. We do not yet know the full extent and the systemic and structural changes which will happen. However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected.
They're not going to stop. Britain is already talking about giving up sovereignty. People in Ireland are already saying, what can we do? What can we do? There are 198 countries that are, discussing giving up sovereignty.
40 countries have already signed on, including the big guys, the EU, the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, Switzerland, the real countries. 40 countries have already signed on. So presumably they already have the votes. So the vote will be taken. And then there's a 6-month period before the actual vote becomes effective. And that's in November. And that's interesting timing because no matter which party wins in the fall, presumably it won't matter because this creates a platform for global governance. Because if you take healthcare decisions that we saw for the last 2.5 years have effectively destroyed American businesses, hurt people's lives, that authority now goes to Tedros at the WHO. So 99.4% of people in the world would be impacted by this because 194 nations are a part of the WHO.
Well, I think maybe in a couple of decades when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin.
Well, what's happened is the amendments which were actually created in HHS by our government remove all restraints from Tedros. They take away the restraints on his declaring a health emergency in a country. He can now declare a health emergency in a country without, if the amendments pass on May 22nd through May 28th. He can declare a health emergency in a country without consulting with the country, without getting any information from the country. And if the country resists, he can go ahead and within 24 to 48 hours, he can begin to mobilize all the resources of the UN against the country, which is resistant to saying that it has a health emergency that might influence other nations.
The merger of biotech and infotech and the rise of total surveillance regimes might make democracy not just less efficient than dictatorships, but actually meaningless. The nature of money is going to change quite dramatically. The old systems of trust and of ownership will have to adapt radically. Maybe the financial system will become so complicated as AI takes over more and more of the action that it will be just too complicated for the human mind. So how does a system functions when no human really understands it? Maybe the ultimate destiny of Homo sapiens is just be consumers. You don't need humans for anything except as consumers. There are many occasions in history when people didn't value very much other people as consumers. If you think about slave economies, so you didn't think, oh, we should liberate all the slaves and improve their conditions so that they will buy our products. And in the future, slavery is unlikely to return. If you need less humans, you definitely don't need slaves. But you could, for example, encounter a situation in which machines are also the consumers. You need consumers, but even in consumption, somebody is doing a better job than humans. You could have an entire economy flourishing without humans in the loop. You can have one corporation that mines ore and produces steel and sells it to a second corporation that produces robots. And they are sold back to the mining corporation that mines more steel, more iron, produces steel, sell it to the robotics corporation. And these two corporations can form an entire economic ecosystem which can spread from planet Earth to other planets and throughout the galaxy, just colonizing new planets and asteroids to mine things, and you just don't need humans in the loop.
If you think about it, AI is actually the fastest path to communism. So, if implemented correctly, AI could actually theoretically solve for abundance. Like, we could totally get to a situation where nobody has to work, Everybody is provided for with a comfortable state of being, comfortable living. AI could automate all the farming, weed out systematic corruption, thereby bringing us to as close as possible to genuine equality. So basically, everything that everybody loves about communism, but without the collective farm. Because let's be real, enforced farming is really not a vibe.
What does a world look like when it is dominated by super intelligent but non-conscious algorithms?
Sapiens, and it's written by Professor Yuval Noah Harari. And I found the book because it was recommended on a book list by Bill Gates and later Barack Obama as one of the most influential books that both of them had read within the last 10 years. So if it was good enough for them, I had to check it out, and it absolutely blew my mind.
We are in the process of acquiring divine abilities, of turning ourselves into gods. And I mean this in the most literal sense possible. It's not a metaphor.
I really sincerely believe you're helping our group get focused on what are the possibilities of the future and some things that we ought to be thinking about.
If you think about the abilities of gods according to various mythologies, we are now acquiring these abilities through ourselves. Like in the Bible, God is the creator. His chief power is to create. He creates animals and plants and humans according to his wishes. Now we are gaining this power to create life, just like God, and in a way, we even go beyond the biblical God. Because even if you believe the Bible, the only thing God managed to create are organic beings. All these trees and giraffes and humans, they are just organic. But we are now trying to create inorganic entities, inorganic life forms, cyborgs, artificial intelligence, and so forth. If we succeed, and there is a very good chance we will, then very soon we will be beyond the God of the Bible.
Ladies and gentlemen, this just in. We'll keep this a little secret between you and me and them and everybody. Whoa. The people that are actually at the tip of the spear, working directly with President Trump on a day-to-day basis to save this nation, they're all joining us on the Reawaken America tour. We have President Donald J. Trump's Chief of Staff, Kash Patel. We've got Peter Navarro's joined us on the tour. We have General Michael Flynn. We have Eric Trump. The people actually working at the tip of the spear with President Donald J. Trump to save America are joining us on the Reawaken America tour. Whoa. If word of this gets out, if the truth about election fraud, medical fraud, religious fraud, monetary fraud, and mainstream media gets out, it may just save the nation.
Wow.
And the hip hop group, do you know who High Res and Jimmy Levy are?
I do. I love them.
Okay, so they're going to be joining us there. Jim Brewer, the comedian's joining us. It's going to be next level. I'm fired up. Are you fired up?
I am fired up, ready to go.
Now, people typically, when they go to timetofreeamerica.com to request tickets, they fill out the form and request tickets. You might talk to them. And so the questions people ask me all the time are, how much are the tickets? How does the whole process work? Can you walk everybody out there listening right now through the process if they want to request a ticket to attend the Reawaken America tour in Virginia Beach and or Rochester, New York?
Well, I give them the opportunity. I tell them that the VIPs are the closest seating to the speakers. VIP lanyards, VIP welcome bags will play Clark's book, Fear Unmasked 2.0, as well as a t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
T-shirt. Okay. We want to fit your budget. So you give me your best price and I'll make sure.
What's the lowest you've sold a ticket for, just so we'll have a range?
I remember this one. Well, actually.
Yeah.
I gave a free ticket to somebody.
Whoa. All right, Thrive Nation, you've been asking us to come to New York, and after much venue hunting, we have finally found a way to bring the Reawaken America tour to Rochester, New York. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are bringing the Reawaken America tour to Rochester, New York. And then July 8th and 9th, we're bringing the Reawaken America tour to Virginia Beach. Whoa. So far on the Reawaken America tour, our past featured speakers have included Mel K, Dr. Vladimir Zelenko, Dr. Dave Martin, Charlie Kirk, Donna Clement, Stella Emanuel, Owen Schroyer, Alex Jones, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Karen Kingston, Chad Prather, praise and worship leader Sean Foyt, Pastor Archer Pulowski, Seth Holhouse, Dr. Judy Mikovits, Alan Keyes, Melissa Tate, Pastor Leon Benjamin, Mike Lindell, Eric Trump, Pastor Mark Burns, Ann Vandersteel, Dr. Richard Bartlett, Ian Smith, Pastor Dave Scarlett, Gene Ho, Mike Adams, Simone Gold, Scott McKay, Dr. Christiane Northrup, Amanda Grace, Dr. Mark Sherwood, Anna Kate, Del Bigtree, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, Dr. Andy Wakefield, Dr. Jim Meehan, Lee Dundas, Dr. Eric Naputi, Alfie Oakes, Pastor Todd Coconato, Floyd Brown, Sheriff Richard Mack, election expert Seth Keschel, Pastor Phil Hotzenpiller, Attorney General Ken Paxton, Dr. Rashid Battar, Sam Sorbo, Senator Wendy Rogers, Sheriff Vic Rigolato. And you're going to absolutely love this event. It's going to be August 12th and 13th in Rochester, New York. Now, if you want to reserve your tickets, all you have to do is text the number 918-851-0102. That's 918-851-0102. Or you can request your tickets online at time2freeamerica.com. To request your tickets, just go to time2freeamerica.com. That's time2freeamerica.com. And remember, on the Reawaken America Tour, you can always name your price. We don't want anybody to be unable to attend this event. So if you want to attend the Reawaken America Tour in New York, request your tickets today by going to time2freeamerica.com. And remember, folks, it's the Great Reawakening versus the Great Reset.
With all the current issues on our agenda, we tend to forget that we are in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. It's now 600 highly educated people located around the world, particularly in Geneva, where our headquarters is. So that's the forum. This is a very disturbing progress for many people, and they just feel overwhelmed. And you develop some kind of a bunker mentality. You say, why not my little small world? And this creates a kind of tendency of egoism, maybe even nationalism, fundamentalism. You want to go back to the old world. And that's, for example, also certainly one of the reasons for the success of presidential candidate Trump in the United States, because so many people are afraid to lose the job.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
We will shut you down. We will cite you, and if we need to, we will arrest you and we will take you to jail. Period.
I wasn't thinking of the Bill of Rights when we did this.
But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute.
God actually spoke to me. He spoke about sacredness. He said to me, Kim, what I place in many, many people is sacred. And if anybody touches what is sacred to me, then it is the end for them. So what I've done in the United States of America is sacred. And there are people on every side that are trying to destroy what I deem sacred. And it's not going to happen.
This is the definition of criminal conspiracy, racketeering, and collusion. This is not a theory. This is evidence.
Because I have upheld this country to spread a light to the rest of the world. When you choose to go against the sacred thing that God puts into the very heart and the soil of this nation, this was sacred to God. Now is the time to act. This is exactly why I need some action from my people.
Hello, everybody. It's an honor to be with you.